Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at One Battle After Another, which is in the running for the 2026 Academy Awards this year. And happy 2026 to everybody.
The front runner, right? Let's make sure we specify that. This is the front runner for it right now. As of now, and like I said, things change all the time. This is the current front runner for Best Picture.
Well, we are going to unpack this movie, the 2 hours and 41 minutes of it. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're slowly growing our channel, so if you can, help us pick up the pace a little bit and kind of tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, even tell your enemies about us. Because if you don't like this podcast, I'm sure your enemies will, just out of spite. And be sure to check out a lot of the content and shows on this channel. We've got The Robot on Mondays. We review trailers on Wednesdays. And I have guests on Tuesdays where we just chat about things, everything from movies from the 60s and 70s to Shakespeare. But let's go ahead and dive into One Battle After Another, because this is a bit of a clusterfuck of a movie. I can think of no other movie that could better advertise Trump derangement syndrome than this. And I would even say, when it comes to movies with a strong political message, and make no mistake, this is a movie that very much wants you to think a certain way politically. It kind of sacrifices everything along the way in order to let you know, don't trust the man is bad. Oh, and fuck the police. I should also note that at the time of recording, by the way, the United States has gone into Venezuela, and Nicolas Maduro has.
Oh my gosh, that's true. Okay, we're not here to talk about politics, Luca. Yes, we got a lot of things going on.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is because I watched this movie last night, and what we're about to discuss in this movie would seem almost to coincide with what's going on in South America. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, Lee, will you stop moaning, for God's sake? I had to watch this movie, as you, and I moaned less than you did. And I'll even tell you this: I unwound by watching Avengers Endgame. That kind of put me back in the right frame of mind. So
I watched this 3 times. 3 times. Yes, well, I'm sorry. Yes, let me not bemoan point anymore.
I mean, hey, listen, listen. I mean, you chose to do this to yourself, man. I mean, it's not my fault that you're a bit of a sadomasochist.
Actually, no, it's more of the issue it's not that I decided to impose stuff or that we did, right? It's because it's the front runner, right, for Best Picture, that you have to watch it, right? Like, you can't be the movie pope, right, and talk about movies and not talk about what's allegedly the Best Picture. And well, we got something here, so let's go ahead and start, right? Because this is we got some things to unpack.
Well,
right?
Before we dive in, because remember, because last year, boys and girls, we did a review of Emilia Perez, which
I forgot about that.
Yeah, which if you haven't, check out that review. It's in the playlist for season 4, or season 3. I forget. But at that time, you and I had a very in-depth discussion about how basically that movie was, was Oscar baiting, because it was basically checking off all the items on the list of what's going to get the Academy's attention. And as I'm watching One Battle After Another, I can't help but think, is this following the same playbook as Emilia Perez?
Well, I mean, in a different form, sure, right? There's
but the MO is kind of the same.
Of course, right? Yeah, I mean, like, literally the whole thing starts, right? So you got this revolutionary group, right? The French 75, and they're infiltrating this detention center, and they're doing it to break out immigrants, right? So that's kind of like their whole thing, and they do it at gunpoint, right? Like, so it's not even like they come up with a clever way of like, we were gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this, but we're gonna do it in some form of like non-violent way, or like a safe way that doesn't put other people's lives in jeopardy.
They do have balls
going straight for it.
I mean, they've got balls when they're doing this, right? Because most people would normally surround ICE and like yell out "F you," and then. Oh
wait, no, this is totally unrelated, Luca. I don't see any connection at all between this and what's going on with this. This is French 75, and this is a story.
Do you find it kind of weird that they don't really give us a year or any time frame? Like, it just It just happens.
That's a good point too. Mm-hmm. This would be any time in the century, man. So it's just a normal thing that happens, right? They wanted to talk about a story of a group of people, which honestly are not that critical to the story either. That's a whole other thing for me because it's like this is all kind of a backdrop for, I guess, a father and daughter relationship. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah, so we got the French 75. They're going into this detention center with guns, right? To go, rescue people. And one of the, I guess, two main characters, I guess three, whatever, I don't know. We got Perfidia, right? Who's kind of our one of our main characters, and I'm going to use that term very loosely, because she's a main character for, well, a short period of time. But you have Perfidia, who ends up running into the commanding officer that's at this detention center, which is Lockjaw, right? Lockjaw played by Sean Penn, right? Sean Penn, which we looked up, right, has 2 Best Actor awards, right? And literally within the first 5 minutes of this film, the first thing I see is you have Perfidia threatens at gunpoint for Sean Penn to get an erection. Awkward pause. And when I saw that, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. I can tell you right now, I'm like, this is so awkward. It's so unneeded. It is just the weirdest thing. I'm like, wow, this is not how I expected the first 5 minutes of my film to go, is watching Sean Penn struggle to pitch a 10 in his pants. That's it. That's how it started. So Perfidia holds Lockjaw at gunpoint and kind of mushes him out of there, with a big old tent in his pants, and they're able to, whatever, they got, something gets out, yay, they're the good guys. I use that term very loosely as well, because we see the Fred 75, right? So we got Perfidia, we have Ghetto Pat. So they're kind of our 2 main characters that we follow, and we see that they're kind of out there. They're just like bombing things now, right? Like this is like, it's not even supposed to be like, I guess, a group we should support. I don't even really know what the mess is supposed to be, because it's like, oh, cool, they're helping immigrants out, but then they're also like bombing like banks and other things. It makes no sense. But Lockjaw, he has this fascination with Perfidia, right? Not in a revenge type of way that you would think from being like, humiliated. He enjoyed, I guess, the interaction, right? He really likes Perfidia. So Lockjaw is kind of going in secret. He's kind of following some of the movements of the French 75, in particular Perfidia. So there's a moment where they're trying to bomb something. I don't know. I don't remember. They bombed so much shit in the first 15 minutes of the film. But they're trying to bomb something, and you see Lockjaw kind of finds her, and he actually allows the bomb to go off in exchange for sex. And Luca, we're 15 minutes in this film, right? I've watched somebody under duress have to, I guess, get aroused. And now we're watching, I mean, it's, by definition, I would consider it rape, though I don't know if she was okay with it because that's a part of her power. I don't know. But I'm 15 minutes in, and I am so confused with the message, with the story, whatever the hell is going on. And I don't know what to think, right? So what was kind of your, I guess, reaction as you started this film? Because I'm sure anyone that's watched this has had some kind of reaction to how this film kind of gets going. No pun intended.
Well, my question is, when she gets knocked up, is she drinking beer while she's pregnant? Because
Oh
we can
yeah,
tell. Because we can tell she's got a big ass bun in the oven. But I
yes.
couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if she was drinking like
Oh
beer
yeah,
or something or what.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I would consider that, right, because she's sitting there. We see her kind of like after all the events that happen, right? Which I guess Lockjaw doesn't pull out, or you know, don't practice safe sex. She's I guess doesn't take Plan B or anything like that. Like there's
Hey, condoms are the chains of the patriarchy, man.
I guess so. I guess so. Because yeah, we fast forward and we see that Perfidia now is super pregnant, right? And kind of like we see her, she's out there like just shooting a gun with like a very pregnant belly, right? Like this is not like hey, I'm pregnant. Like it's very very clear. Like she is ready to pop. And so she's sitting there shooting a gun. She's drinking, right? She's acting drunk. So I'm sure the implication is that she's sitting there drinking alcohol with a baby, something that babies are notoriously not fans of, right? And eventually she gives birth to the baby Charlene, right? However, Perfidia, well, she doesn't care too much about the baby, right? She's, more interested in, the revolution, as it would be. So,
but you want to know what's funny was that Perfidia's mom stops Pat and she's like, "You're not good enough for her." And then a few scenes later, she's like, "Yeah, fuck this. I can't be tied down, man. I need to be free and go bomb shit." And
yeah,
I'm like, you do know what your daughter's doing, right? Like she's actively going around trying to kill people, and you're telling this guy who, at this point in his life, seems fairly stable compared to her, that he's not good enough for your daughter.
that's saying a lot, right? That's
Yeah.
saying a lot because Pat definitely does some sketchy things here.
Right, but by comparison, I mean he's.
Oh yes, yes.
I mean, at least put together. I will say this too, because like I'd even say the first 30 minutes, like I guess for whatever reason, they seem to explore the different levels of sexual kink. I mean, you've got BDSM. I guess you've got, puck porn, and then you've got, I guess, I don't know, like explosive gel porn. I don't know. Like it just seems everybody is ready to drop trousers at at a moment's notice and just go at it, right? Not to mention too, like the code names that they have, just downright ridiculous. Like the biggest one that made me stop and scratch my head was
Austin Powers blush. Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got someone named Jungle Pussy, like you kind of have to wonder what exactly was going on in their mind when that happened.
Like did Austin Powers, did he satirize this like decades ago, right? Making fun of all the, crazy things that happened in James Bond with all the character names, right? Like, I mean, this is something that's old as far as what's out there. This is not some type of crazy comedy. Like, this is just like something that we've seen 1,000 times.
Well, another thing too is the fact that the French 75, they're trying to be presented as this group that is progressive and trying to, battle the injustice of the U.S. government. But the way they go about doing it, you kind of have to ask yourself, well, how exactly are these people heroic? Because they're doing things. I mean, they're doing things that would potentially get you the death penalty. Really?
Oh yeah.
And this is a problem that we see throughout the film and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it's this notion that in any given story there is a clear definition of who the hero is and I would say who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is, right? And normally we root for the protagonist and we generally don't want the antagonist to win. I mean, case in point, Avengers Endgame. We want the Avengers to win and we want Thanos to get his comeuppance. Here it's like the people in the French 75 are just as bad as the people, in immigration or the US Army who are trying to catch them. So really it's like it's more of, well, if you're sympathetic to these beliefs, of course you're going to want to root for the French 75. Or if you consider yourself a conservative, then of course you're going to root for Lockjaw and the cops to capture these guys.
Yeah, but I feel like they can't even really make that argument because the French 75, they're just like domestic terrorists. Like it's different if it was like, oh cool, like they are doing all this stuff, in a way that was doing it, but like you're going out there, you're just like creating chaos for the sake of creating chaos. They're like, bombing like banks and all this other stuff. Like, it's like, okay, cool. You're not really fighting. You're just like fighting everything for the sake of fighting everything. And I just don't know anybody that could like look at like that group and be like, you know what? Hey, like, even if you're not a fan, and like I said, not here to talk about politics right here, not here to talk about the detention centers and everything like that.
The problem with this movie is that it forces the politics on you. Where
yes, but even if you feel strongly about that, it's like, okay, is it like, everybody else's fault? Are you going to sit there and chastise everyone that's a part of it as being part of the problem? If that's the case, then that's fine. But it's like, at a certain stage, you're going too much into like the completely, like, you can't go so far on one side of the direction and expect everything to be okay. It just, it was bonkers. It was bonkers, right? And then you see like Perfidia, right? So the group, they're like stealing from a bank, right? And she, kills a police officer, right? A guy that's just there, like, protecting, all of our money, right? People that believe in banks.
The guy was wounded too, so.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, because we don't really see, right? We don't see her shoot him, right? It's all kind of like cloak and dagger. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, it's implied. Yeah.
If you imply it, just show us. Like, you're not, like, you're gonna sit there and have everything else out there. You'd have characters like, getting erections, but we're not gonna show her shooting a cop for some reason. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But in essence, so she, kills this officer and she gets captured, right? So Lockjaw kind of works with Perfidia that if she gives up names for people within the French 75, that she will remain out of prison. And she does that, right? She does give up people that are in the French 75, and they go out there, and I mean, they're pretty much executed, right? Like, they're not like, most of these guys are not going down, like, they're just like being shot out there. And so Perfidia is giving up people for her own, revolution, and she ends up pretty much fleeing the country, and she just fucks off the rest of the film, right? We're 30 minutes into this, and Perfidia, who's pretty much been the main character, right? So she has little baby Charlene that we pretty much never see. We see a little bit of, Pat, who's, kind of the parent of the group, right? Because she's like, too much of a strong person to go out there and do things. So she's going to do her own shit regardless. She'll live, Pat at home to, take care of the kid. And then she just flies out of the film, right? And she never appears again, right? This is not a character that shows back up later or has some, important, I mean, I guess the plot is kind of driven around her, but her actual character doesn't appear until like the last 2 seconds of it, which is like, a little voiceover montage thing, right? That's that, right? And I just have to ask myself, why on God's green earth would you focus so much on this character for 30 minutes of the film and then have the character just disappear?
Well, not only that, I mean, you're also talking about a character who's emotionally stunted, and I would even go so far as to say it's hypocritical, because I thought
She's
the
a
whole
narcissist.
yeah, because the whole point of being in this revolutionary group is to presumably kind of make the world a better place, or at least make the country a better place. But here she is basically selling out the very people who she thought she could trust and who trusted her, and some of them kind of get shot in alleyways, and some die in a blaze of glory. So it's like, well, what was the point of all of this if you guys are just going to turn on each other at the end? I mean, for God's sakes, we're talking about a lady who, because there was a scene before she ditches the family, where she basically complains that she and the baby never bonded, right? Yeah. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is this is something that an immature person would say. I mean, they complain about everything, but they never make the effort to want to improve the situation. And to further emphasize the point, when things don't go her way, what does she do? She takes her ball and goes home. She just picks up and leaves, right? because things aren't going the way that she wants. So when so to your point, yeah, she's a narcissist, and she's also very much concerned about just taking care of herself, right?
Mhm.
She's not gonna. She doesn't care about her mother, who again, felt that no man was good enough for her daughter, and yet she kind of just leaves her high and dry. Her friends, she kind of lets them get killed or captured, and then she becomes a slam piece for Lockjaw until she decides, oh wait, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm going to flee all the way to Mexico. There's nothing about. From the very beginning, there's nothing about this woman that would make you say, "I'm rooting for you" or "I can sympathize with her." Right?
Yeah, she's irredeemable as a character. Which, hey, it's fine, right? You can create characters like that, right? They happen all the time in the movies. They're typically the villains of the story.
Right.
That's the problem, right? And we're supposed to feel somehow for this character, and it's troubling to me, right, that you create this film, and it's just there's such a this almost feels like a 30-minute intro to a film, right? It is so weird how they kind of set this up. To me, right, if I'm the one that's writing this or I'm trying to put this together, right, would it make more sense that we just start off at where where Pat and Charlene are grown up, and you kind of sprinkle in stuff about the mom throughout the film to help us understand more about her, instead of literally spending the whole 30 minutes just focusing on her, just to pull out of the film and just have it continue like nothing happened? Because
the payoff decision. Yeah, because the payoff is, doesn't happen at the end.
Yeah, there's no payoff. Exactly, there's no payoff.
Well, I would say this, like, if you wanted to make it impactful, I wouldn't say better, but if you want to make it more impactful, that scene where Lockjaw shows up, expecting to, get his rocks off, right? What they could have done was they could have had that situation turn to where maybe she tries to attack Lockjaw and basically say, so instead of leaving that note, she trying to attacks Lockjaw and says, I'm not your slam piece or anything like that, and then he accidentally kills her in the scuffle, right? So everything that we kind of see, moving forward in the film, there, at least for the audience, perspective, there's a bit more of an impact, because we know at that point Charlene is never going to meet her mother. She's basically being fed, fed on stories and propaganda of who her mother, is supposed to be, rather than who she really is, right? It's kind of like that mystery of who was she really, because we as the audience knows, what kind of person she was. She died trying to fight off, a man, an army captain or general who wanted to get his dick wet, as opposed to, a strong feminist who was trying to make the world a better place for her, her baby daughter. But I thought, but that was something that kind of crossed my mind, as I was watching, because I'm like, if you're not going to do anything with her, then you might as well just kill her off, because she's of no further use. And I would even say, near the end, when she reads the note, that could kind of be that moment of catharsis, or where it kind of tugs at the heartstrings, where we know she's never going to meet her mother, but she kind of has that one letter that kind of lets her know, I'm sorry for what happened, and I hope to one day meet you. But obviously we know, she got killed earlier in the movie, so that's never going to happen. But it's a wasted opportunity, and it's whatever.
Yeah. So now, after the first 30 minutes, right, we have a 16-year time skip, right? A very casual 16-year time skip. And then we kind of, I guess this is what kind of starts the main part of the film, right? And I feel weird having to segment it like this, but it's really how the movie presents it. So we have the 16-year time gap, where now we have the now Colonel Lockjaw, right? So he's kind of gone up in the world as far as ranks. And he wants to join this this super secret white supremacist society called the Christmas Adventures Club, right? However, right, the fact that he had this link with Perfidia, right, that would cause some issues, right? Because Perfidia is a black character, he's white, so obviously, right, that's not good. And this, Christmas Adventure Club would frown upon that, right? So Lockjaw decides, hey, well, I need to go out there because Perfidia's kind of in the win, right? So like you said, she went to Mexico and she fucked off the rest of the film. So Perfidia's in the win. So the only thing that could really tie him to this alleged relationship, would be the daughter Charlene, right? So really what this film is, the majority of it is just a really long and drawn out paternity test. Because that's all we really care about, or that's all that Lockjaw really cares about, is he needs to see if Charlene is his or not and kind of dispose of the evidence. So Lockjaw uses his military rank, right? And he finds out that Pat, right, the father, Charlene, the daughter, they go by Bob and Willa, right? So I apologize for the audience. We've been talking about Pat. We've been talking about Charlene. They are now going to be Bob and Willa for the rest of the review, just so we're on the same page. And this is where everything kind of goes, right? So you have Willa gets kind of pulled out early from the situation as they know that the the army's coming, and Bob's kind of like left behind, but he's trying to figure out how to find the daughter, right? So he's trying to figure out where the extraction point or the rendezvous point is for the daughter.
Well, keep in mind too. Bob isn't firing on all cylinders because
don't worry.
He's been indulging. He's been indulging for quite a while.
We'll talk a lot about Bob. Don't you worry, Luca. We're gonna talk about him. So first of all,
well, I'm gonna go and let you talk. I gotta go take care of something real quick. So, So carry on. I'll be right back.
Okay. So hurry back. So we have right. So the Christmas Adventures Club, right? So this is that white the white supremacist secret society, and it's called the Christmas Adventurers Club, right? I couldn't help but notice the very clear connection with the Super Adventure Club from South Park. Now, Luke, are you back yet? Don't hear him. So we're going to continue, right? So find it very, very odd, right? So we got this Super Adventure Club, right, for South Park. And obviously, they're a little bit different, right? So the Christmas Adventure Club is just a bunch of white supremacists. Super Adventure Club, assaults children. So, but I couldn't help but notice the name feels oddly similar. And the whole time that they're presenting this, I'm just like, oh, it's kind of like a South Park episode because you're kind of naming this so similar. It's hard for me as a fan of South Park not to kind of draw that conclusion. But I guess, Luca, for you, and if you're not back yet, we're just going to kind of awkwardly wait for you. Did you kind of get that connection with South Park with the names of these two groups that are just, obviously totally, I mean, I guess that's satirical because we know, unfortunately, there is a bunch of white supremacist groups out there. Just like I'm sure, unfortunately, there is, a bunch of groups that assault kids. But I couldn't help but notice the similarities. So, Luca, did you put that together when you were watching this?
I mean, it's very much on the nose, like with everything. They oddly enough, they kind of dress like them too, in a weird sort of way. So, but I don't know. Everything about this movie, like, you want to take seriously, but you can't take seriously at the same time. Because again, there's a political agenda they're trying to hammer home, and they really, really want you to think and feel a certain way. And if you don't, then you can fuck off. That's my takeaway from watching all of this. It's like one side is definitely good, innocent, and is the victim, and the other side is the aggressor and very, very bad. Or as Bob will call them, bad hombres.
Yeah. And I mean, it is like slated as a black comedy, right? So, like, I know you're going for a certain angle with this, but at a certain stage, it's just like, I don't know, it's so on the nose. It's like, is it supposed to be funny because it's not taking itself seriously, or is it taking itself too seriously by what it's doing? And by the end of it, I could not tell the difference. The other thing that kind of bothered me, right? So, because we spent so much time focusing on Perfidia, right, at the beginning, Bob and Willa, they didn't really get a lot of time to connect, right? So what did you think about their dynamic at the start of this, right? Because for me personally, I'm looking at the relationship and it's just like, oh, so Bob's a stoner. That's useless, right? Because, he's just been, smoking up for 16 years. So that's, I guess, supposed to be the comedy aspect of it is like, oh, it's a stoner. And then like the daughter is, of course, just this strong, independent person that watches over the dad, which, I mean, we've seen done loads of times. But my whole issue is that the movie doesn't really allow us time to see what the relationship is like, right? Like we get like the very small kind of like interaction at like the little house that they have out in the middle of nowhere. So we see a little bit of it, but then like we don't see enough of it for me to justify everything that happens. So I don't know. What did you think about Bob? I mean, was Bob and Willa's, I guess, relationship totally underplayed? Do you feel like we need to see more to be more invested in what's about to happen?
So the bigger question I have is, why the hell does he decide to indulge himself nonstop? Like,
You wonder why he's such a huge stoner?
I mean, is he just stupid? Like, what's going on here? Like, I mean, to go back to the example that I said earlier, right, about how if they had just made Perfidia die in that scene at the house, that would have impacted a whole lot of things. If Bob had gotten word that Perfidia had been killed, right, that would kind of make a lot more sense as to why he kind of does what he does with abusing his body.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Yep.
Because how many times have we heard stories where where a parent dies and the other parent just goes to pieces and they can't really do anything for themselves.
Yeah.
They just become this this morose figure who just indulges in alcoholism or drug abuse or whatever because they can't cope.
Mhm.
The fact that Bob is just randomly deciding, I'm just going to smoke weed and do all this crazy stuff, I really don't understand why he's doing it, other than possibly the explanation that he's as emotionally stunted as everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because at the very beginning, like, he actually does seem to have a pretty level head, because he takes care of Charlene, he raises her, right? So at what point does he decide, I'm just gonna fuck up because I'm tapping out at this point?
Yeah. And the other issue I have, right, because you bring up a good point, right? So we see Bob is constantly smoking. The other issue is that, well, we never really got to know him in the first place, right? Like he's absolutely a secondary character in the first half of it. So yeah, we see him. He, clearly has feelings for Perfidia, and he wants to do the right thing by the child. But we don't really know that much about him, right? Because he doesn't get any screen time. So is Bob being a stoner? Is this outside of his normal character? I don't know, because we never got to really know his original character. So, I mean, is him smoking all the time? For all I know, that this is just on brand for him, right? This is just the person that he is, and he's been fully able to function and do this stuff because of who he is. So, this is the problem when you focus so much on one aspect that as your story tries to pick up from it, everything kind of falls apart, because he had such a, to me, right, an opening that made no sense and focused on characters that had no real impact on the rest of the film.
Well, I was going to say too, because like in the earlier parts of the film, like, we don't really see him indulge as much as Perfidia does, right? Because
very true, yeah.
Yeah, because Perfidia, like like you said earlier, I mean, she's drinking while she's pregnant. She's doing all sorts of things to that poor baby, and she didn't give a shit about what's going on or what's going to happen. Bob, on the other hand, like, I mean, you don't really see him indulging or doing anything like that. He's pretty much focused on the mission. Yeah, he's a bit whacked out when it comes to his political views, and he's a bit over enthusiastic about bringing down the man, but we don't really see him do anything that would suggest this is going to be a huge problem later on in life, right?
Yeah.
It's like we only get introduced to this after Charlene is pretty much matured to close to a fully functioning adult, right? Because she's like 15 or 16 when we are introduced to her.
Yes. Yep. So we got this, right? So this is kind of where we're at with the film. So we have Willa, who is now being kind of swooped to safety. So she's going towards a monastery. And Bob, right, our stoner Bob, he is trying to get to the rendezvous point. But unfortunately for Bob, right, in order to get to the rendezvous point, right, he needs to figure out where that is. So there's kind of this gag, I guess, right, because that's what I'm going to call it, because we kind of go through a whole bunch of stuff here. But Bob is trying to, speak with a revolutionary over the phone. And there's like, he has to, they talk in code, right? They're talking in passwords. So unfortunately for Bob, because he's, been a stoner for so long, and this is coming from Bob's mouth, not mine, he's kind of fried his brain, and he doesn't remember the codes. So there's kind of this whole little bit here where Bob is trying to call people up. He's talking to a guy, and, don't know about you. I feel like having like 50 passwords is not very effective for being a revolutionary. It's like typically, if I'm in trouble, I kind of need to get things out very quickly. I don't got time to recite like 30 codes in a row. It's not like anyone really talks like this normally, so it's not like the codes make a lot of sense, because it's like, hey, I'm just rifling off random things.
I mean, but they're stuck in the 60s. This is how they used to do things back in the 60s.
Oh, is that what it is? Sorry, I forgot in this like, time frame that we can't possibly know. We're using, tropes for the 60s to deal with contemporary issues that are going on. But hey, it is what it is. But Bob can't figure out where it is, right? So he's just kind of stumbling around. He ends up bumping into Willa's karate instructor, right? Played by Benicio del Toro. So he bumps into him. But unfortunately, Bob is still unable to figure out what's going on. So now he's, kind of with the karate instructor, as he's trying to figure out what's going to happen. So eventually he's, talking to the revolutionary again. And he's like asking for his supervisor, except using like this kind of, code lingo. And I have to admit, right, I kind of laughed at that part just because I realized how absurd it is that I've been following this movie for the past 20 minutes, and all of this resulted in him asking for a manager. And I was just like, oh my God, is this the joke? Is this the comedy bit that we've been looking for? I don't know, because this is about the only funny thing I've seen so far in this so allegedly black comedy that they created. But after Bob asks for supervisor, he gets to someone, finds out that his daughter Willa is at this monastery. So Bob is trying to get out of this crazy situation where shit's blowing up on the streets because something's happening. So Bob ends up, he initially gets captured by the police, but luckily the karate instructor has a lot of pull, right? So he's able to get Bob out of custody and sends him on his merry way to the monastery, where kind of the final, I guess, sequence happens. And you know what, Luca? We're gonna have to talk about this at some stage, right? Because this is a black comedy. And how did you like the comedy? Just hit me with it, right? How funny? How much are you laughing during this?
I didn't realize it was a comedy. I thought this entire time as I'm watching it, I'm just thinking this is just, I mean, this is the long lost, Harris Walls campaign, ad that we never got to see.
Oh my gosh, no! It is. It's supposed to be a comedy. It literally says it's a black comedy action thriller. And
I'll tell you what's really, really messed up was was the score that was playing when Bob is trying to escape from the police, and I got to say, like, usually when you listen to a score, whenever it's playing over a certain scene, it amplifies the emotions and kind of lets you know how you as the audience are supposed to feel about the certain interaction, right? Here, I had no idea if I was supposed to laugh or I was supposed to like shake my fist or if I was supposed to cheer or whatever. It was just a very high-pitched, weird, scratching noise that I just couldn't get over, and it got over, and that score, just like every other bit in that movie, was overplayed and overdone. I mean, not only do you have to, are you dealing with Bob not knowing the countersign to to the question of what time is it, but you've also got that bit where he's trying to charge his phone, and it's like, and it's just like, okay, this is like really unnecessary and really painful, actually, because do we really need to see Bob running around trying to look for a simple outlet to charge his phone? It makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Like, the bits that are supposed to be bits don't
But that's the
work.
comedy bit. That's the comedy bit, right? That's the
Well,
funny thing.
you can tell that the person who wrote this has very little experience in comedy, or if they do, they really suck because it didn't land.
Damn, brutal. But yeah, I don't get it. Like, to me, like, I mean, obviously the first part, right? It is very serious, right? I cannot think of, I don't even know how I could misconstrue anything as comedy other than, I guess, Sean Penn getting turned on at being a gunpoint, but that's here nor there. But yeah, like this whole middle part, I feel like it's supposed to be like the comedy bit of it. And I mean, yeah, is it quirky watching Leonardo DiCaprio run around and just be a stoner and just like being like, oh, it's like, okay, it's like kind of like goofy and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's odd, but I'm like, does that equal comedy? And I just didn't get it, right? It just didn't really sync with me at all. So, but just know, right? So, Bob.
Here's my thing, though, Lee. Hold on.
Yeah.
So I will say this. I mean, we kind of know that Leonardo DiCaprio isn't really known for his comedic chops, right?
Very true.
He's more famous for doing dramatic roles. I mean, The Aviator, Blood Diamond, Titanic, those kinds of roles. I think like if they really wanted to make it land, they probably should have gotten someone who's who's got more comedic chops to what they're doing than Leo, because asking Leo to do a comedic bit would be like asking you to do a backflip for the U.S. Olympic team, right?
You probably couldn't do that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's in Leo's toolbox to kind of pull off that kind of comedic bit. So that's probably another reason why it kind of landed flat, because they gave this to Leo and said, here, run with it, see what you can do with it. And I'm sure in his mind he thought it was pretty funny, but when it actually kind of got played out, it didn't really work the way that anyone thought it was supposed to. So
I don't know. The audience seemed to really like it according to everything else, but I believe it's all fake and a lie. But yeah, so so now we have Bob is able to finally figure out where Willa is, right, which is at this monastery. The monastery of the something Sisters of the Beavers or some shit. I don't remember what's called. There's something like that. Beaver was in the name because it's funny. But so he's going out there, right? So Bob is going to this monastery. Now Willa, right? She's already been at this monastery for some time, right? So she's safe, right? And she finds out that her mother, right? So Bob has been telling Willa all this time that the mother was, awesome, and she was, super cool, and she was, there for the revolution, everything like that. And she, she's dead because of Lockjaw, right? So that's what she envisions, right? That's what she understands her mother to be, is this revolution that died for the cause, right? However, Willa finds out at this stage that, what? Perfidia, she actually kind of rolled on a bunch of people, right? And she's known now as a rat, right? Which obviously, has a negative impact on Willa, which I totally understand.
Yeah, Perfidia. Yeah, if you think about it, Perfidia was perfidious. So,
ooh, I like that. I don't know what perfidious means, but I'm going to assume that makes sense to someone in the audience. So,
treacherously, perfidious, treacherous.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, my rolling dictionary. So, but like literally, we see her being told this, right? And she has a negative reaction to it. But the whole time I'm thinking, it's like, does she really care about her mom or anything that happened, right? Because we don't know. We never actually got to know her character. So it's like, hey, cool. For all I know, she doesn't care about her mom because she's never had the mom in her life. Like, how are we as the audience supposed to know that Willa actually cares anything about her mom if you never actually see her interact or do anything with the mother? It makes no sense. It's like, you can't just assume as an audience member, for all I know, she hates her mom. She's just like, well, you cared more about the revolution than me. And the fact that you did all this, she hates it, right? I had no idea. So it's so weird to me that they try to set this up like, oh, it's such a heart-wrenching moment for Willa to find out that her, mom was actually a rat. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, who cares? Does she even care? I don't know. As an audience member, oh yeah, like a daughter finding out that her mother, who's been told all of her life, is a good person, or maybe not. Let me not use the term "good person," but she died for her cause, and she's thought of very highly. Now you find out that she's, really just a rat that was selling people out. I don't know why, as an audience member, I should care because the movie never showed us anything about it. So, am I the only one that's bothered by like it feels like they keep trying to like shove these feelings down our throats, but the movie never earns any of what it's looking for.
I mean, for that matter too, because we know Perfidia is someone who is, who's very selfish, who's very inconsiderate, and well, as I said earlier, very perfidious. So these are not qualities that would make any child want to look at their parent in a good light, Now, now, granted, if Perfidia had been a bit more involved in the raising of Charlene, and if Charlene had been able to develop memories with her mother,
yes,
even if her parent, even if her former colleague said, "Yeah, your mother was a total rat," she can at least say, "Well, she may have been a rat to you, but to me, she was my mother, right?" But she doesn't even have that because that never transpired. She kind of just left into the wind, and really, I would even say, it's kind of a good thing that she doesn't really know her mother, because at least then she's not influenced by any of her thoughts or any of her ideas. She can form up and become, a better person. I would even say, given the fact that she had to live with, a drugged out, tweaked out conspiracy nut for 15 years, I got to give her credit for coming out, a much better person than what Bob became. Really,
yeah, very true, very true. Great point there. So Willa finds this out at the monastery, right? That, oh no, my mom was a bad person or something. So now we got that going on. Now, with that being said, right? So now we also have the Racist Club, or whatever, the Christmas Adventures Club, right? They find out that Lockjaw might have this interracial kid, right? So they're starting to kind of put two things together, that, hey, Lockjaw's trying to do something here, and he's going after these two people, one of them a child, and the Christmas Adventures Club, they're like, oh, that's kind of weird, right? And there's all of a sudden this rumor that he had this interracial relationship. Hold
on. Do you find it kind of weird? So when that guy goes to meet with the other members of the Christmas Adventure Club, he goes to this fancy house. He goes down the hallway and he goes down a tunnel.
Yes.
And as I'm watching this movie, I'm just wondering: does every house in California have tunnels? Because Bob had a tunnel which he used to escape the first time around, and now this dude is going around another subterranean tunnel to get to the secret meeting place with the other presidents or members of the Christmas Adventure Club. I just thought it was weird.
That's not the only weird thing, right? I was still trying to figure out what they're like. Why is Christmas being put on blast like this for this group, right? I guess that's supposed to be the part of the comedy, is like, oh, Christmas, you wouldn't normally associate that with, a bunch of people being a bunch of racists, but I guess that's a part of the comedy, is that's why they're called that. Because they like start talking about like Santa and like Kris Kringle, and they have this like weird thing, or what? It's just
Lee, keep in mind, if you want to be diverse, if you want to be respectful of other cultures, you don't say Merry Christmas, you say Happy Holidays. So,
that's true, right? And then they were really obsessed with the Christmas part. So thank you, Luke, and thank you for explaining to me the joke that the movie was trying to tell me. Because we all know a good joke needs explanation.
Don't thank me. Thank all the conservative outlets who have made it a point to say there is a war on Christmas. So,
very true. Thank you. So,
thank you, Fox News, for clearing that up for us.
So now, I just want to make sure as an audience, right? Because this part is kind of getting a little bit wild, right? So the monastery is where everyone's trying to get to, right? Woola's there, Lockjaw's en route, Bob's en route, right? And now we also have this Christmas assassin right, that's going after Lockjaw, right? So they're all kind of like honing in on the same location, right? So the first person that arrives at the monastery, right, is actually Lockjaw. So Lockjaw goes ahead and he's, doing the paternity test that he's, gone there to do. And we find out that, Lockjaw, he's indeed the father, right? So we find out that Lockjaw is the father. Bob eventually shows up there at the monastery as Lockjaw is leaving with Willa to do whatever, right? I'm presuming she's going to be killed, right? And actually, no, let me not presume, right? We know that he wants her to be killed, right? Because he's the link, or she's, excuse me, the link to everything that's going on. So Lockjaw wants to kill Willa, so he's, taking away from the monastery. Why he just doesn't want to do it himself and just get it over with, I don't know. I felt like, if he just took care of her right there, then the movie would be over. But we need an extra 30-minute long, like, car chase sequence to go on. But Lockjaw leaves the monastery. Bob was not able to successfully intervene. So they're kind of on this chase, right? Where Bob is chasing after Lockjaw with now Willa in hand. So Lockjaw, he then, just to make this more convoluted, Lockjaw gives Willa to like a bounty hunter that he's worked with previously, and he wants the bounty hunter to kill her, but the bounty hunter doesn't want to do it, so he brings it to, I don't know, a group of like soldiers that are just kind of, I guess, helping out with the operation where the soldier's going to do it. But then the bounty hunter has a change of heart and is like, I don't want to leave her here because I don't kill kids. Like, this bounty hunter has some type of moral code that we're supposed to care about, even though he's, showed up very briefly once in the film. But he decides, like, hey, I don't want to have her die. So he goes in, kills a bunch of military dudes, and also gets shot and killed. So now he's dead. And like I said, fuck all if I'm supposed to know what's happening in this, because we don't know anything about this bounty hunter, but he's willing to give up his life for Willa. So you have that. So Willa ends up fleeing, right, in this vehicle that happens, right? On the other standpoint, right, we see that the Christmas assassin has caught up now with Lockjaw, and he shoots Lockjaw in the face. And Lockjaw crashes his vehicle, right? So now we got the assassin, we got Willa, and we got Bob, right? So the Christmas assassin, he follows Willa. I kind of forget, honestly, why he was wanting to follow her. I don't really care at this stage, but he's following Willa. Willa sets up a trap for the assassin and murders him. So now the assassin's gone. So now it's just Bob and Willa. Bob eventually meets up with Willa where the dead body is, and she's, initially kind of apprehensive, right? And I understand that, right? Willa's gone through a lot, so she doesn't really know what's going on and what to trust. But, Bob kind of convinces her, like, hey, I'm your daddy, don't you worry, I'm here for you now. And the two finally unite together. So there's this whole fucking chase sequence here at the end. I don't even really know what to say about it, because it just felt like, hey, we're just going to make this really convoluted and have a whole bunch of characters, like, just kind of coming all together in these cars. Now, I mean, I will say that there is some, like, I would say some parts are like, hey, I really want to see who catches up with who and what happens. But, God, it just felt like a lot of random things to have happen at the end of your film in this, like, really awkward car chasing sequence. I guess, what did you feel about that? Because I felt like this was like the big, I don't know, action sequence, I guess.
I mean, it was really played out. Like, I don't know, maybe it was like part of an advert to kind of bring more people to California, come see our beautiful roads. We've got, wide open spaces, so, you can drive around, but be careful because there are a lot of bumps along the way. I don't know.
Yep. And people like to park on top of hills and cause accidents. So, but yep, that's that. So, they meet together. Now Lockjaw, right? So he actually survives this accident, right? So he, meets up again with the Christmas Adventures Club. He explains what happened, and he kind of like mentions that he was drugged and like he was sexually assaulted. They use the term semen demon, which I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but they use that. But he tries to sell the story about what happened. Clearly, the Christmas Club didn't believe in it because they knock him out and kill him. So now Lockjaw's dead, and our final sequence here is Bob and Willa as they chat, and Bob gives Willa this note from the mom that kind of talks about how, maybe the mom will show up again in the future. And that's the end of it. And fuck this movie. I don't... the ending, to me, felt so totally unearned. I don't know anyone that could actually look at this and be like, oh, that was really heartwarming. Because we know, as you've pointed out, as we've talked a lot, right? Perfidia doesn't care about anything other than herself, right? So trying to have this nice cathartic moment at the end feels totally unearned. And it's not even just, I don't even know how you can justify it, right? It's unjustifiable for everything that we've seen. And that's really how the movie ends. And I don't even know where to begin with this, Luca. I really don't. So this film, right, once again, right, currently the front runner, as far as I could tell, for Best Picture, right? And the whole thing was a mess from beginning to end for me, right? The first 30 minutes we spent talking about, or we focus on Perfidia and how much of a piece of shit human that she is, right? Which, hey, fine, right? We all need to, create a narcissist, or, she played that role well, right? I definitely believe that she was a piece of shit. So did that well, right? And then after the 30 minutes, it's just like, hey, cool, we're going to just kind of forget about Perfidia, and we're just going to have a story now focusing on the daughter, right? There's a whole bunch of weird hijinks that happen with Bob, which I guess is the comedy angle that's supposed to be happening with this, as he's trying to get there. All the while, you got, Lockjaw trying to get this paternity test done, and absolutely nothing about this was enjoyable for me. I look back at it, right, and I watched this film twice, and I just don't really have anything super positive to say. I will say this, right? Acting, super good. Thought the acting was great, right? I absolutely think the acting was the strong point of this. For some of these characters, like Benicio del Toro, that wasn't in it for a whole lot of time, thought they did good, right? Leo, great actor, able to do this stuff. And really, to me, Sean Penn was the one that stuck out as the colonel, Lockjaw, as kind of like being, I don't want to say the high point, because he's obviously a giant piece of shit too. But at least the acting part was on point, right? So you have all this happening, but the story is just an utter mess that really doesn't feel like it did anything good. It feels like it focused on characters that just dip away. They try to show this emotional moments about her finding out about her, Willa finding out about the mom, but it doesn't really make any sense because we never see her interact with her mom, so we don't know anything about how she feels about it. All in all, we're just trying to see, we're trying to see Bob reunite with her. And now, granted, I will say, I do feel like Bob wants his daughter to be safe, right? Like, we've seen, in the flashbacks, we know that he cared about the daughter, or, he wanted to, protect her, and he wanted to start a family and everything. So we kind of know at least a little bit about Bob, what he wants to do, and we know he wants to find her, but really, that's about it. And it feels so hollow all the way through, because we as the audience, just because it's a father and daughter trying to get together, doesn't just automatically make it a strong story or something that we're supposed to be invested in. And as I just went through this, I, maybe, had some kind of laughs at a few parts, right? I was like, oh, that's kind of amusing, or hey, this is really absurd. So I kind of got a grin at oh, this is just fucking crazy. Hey, whatever, we'll just go with it. And as we got to the very end, I'm just like, God, I don't know what I watched. And then to have the story try to be like this nice emotional send off of, oh, like, you know, the mom's gonna eventually show up. And I'm like, no, fuck you, movie. You did not deserve that. Don't you dare try to make it sound like the mom's gonna eventually show up and this is supposed to be some heartwarming moment, right? It is not earned that in the slightest. So I'm just gonna give this a final review because I don't really want to talk about it anymore. I'll give it. Okay, I will give it 1.5. Yeah, let me do it. I'll do 1.5. Sean Penn pitching a 10 out of 5. Right? Only because the acting was good. Everything else with this could go jump off a cliff. Did not enjoy it. Don't understand why people are obsessed with it. And I'm gonna be really embarrassed if this wins movie of the year.
I mean, Jennifer Lawrence really liked it. She said it was one of the best movies she'd ever seen this year.
Oh, well, thank you, Jennifer Lawrence. I appreciate that.
So I think she might take exception to your assessment. But
bring it on, J-Law.
I mean, for this, like, I thought about it. Like, I wanted to give it a 0 out of 5. I'd probably give it a 0.9 out of 5, just because the only thing that I found slightly amusing was Sean Penn pitching a tent. I know that's immature, but nothing about this movie is mature other than, hey, you know, these people are bad. You should hate them and you should root for us because we're the good guys. Why are we the good guys? We don't know, but you'll figure it out. Because, hey, you know, the U.S. government is bad and closing the borders is bad and putting people in detention is bad. And we definitely want to make a political statement. It's like, you made this movie. This is close to a 3-hour-long movie. That's a lot of of political, grandstanding you're jamming into this 2-hour movie, and it's really not saying anything. It's not really doing anything substantial either. It's just relying on cheap gags and I will agree. Leonardo DiCaprio is a great actor, but for this, I felt he was out of his depth, right? Because if he was trying to do comedy, he did a really poor job at it. He really didn't sell it as it were.
I would argue I don't know how you sell it because of what he was given. Because all of his whole thing is he's just a stoner.
Right, but even then, like, there's a pretty good way to play a stoner, and there's a really unbelievable way to play a stoner. Right?
Very fair.
I mean, Giovanni Ribisi can play a stoner, and you would believe it, and he would make it funny. And the same goes for Cheech and Chong. I mean, those guys made a career out of playing, stoners who got into all sorts of hijinks. Here, it's like if it was supposed to be funny, I wasn't laughing. There wasn't anything about this that made me want to root for anybody in the movie. And it's kind of bizarre that you would have a movie where neither the protagonist or the antagonist were worth rooting for, really. Because as much as as much as they try to hammer home the point that Bob is trying to reunite with Willa, a part of me kind of felt like, I hope this guy gets taken out. Like, if someone were to shoot him, or if he flipped the car while he was stoned and he crashed, or if Lockjaw managed to get the jump on him, that would at least put Leonardo DiCaprio out of his misery, because then he doesn't have to go through another 30 minutes of trying to run around all bug-eyed trying to figure out, well, shit, how do I operate a gun? How do I drive in this direction? Like, what happened here? What I also find kind of weird is the fact that this movie is a very thinly disguised attack on the current political situation. Again, I know we don't like to talk about politics here, but this movie makes it nearly impossible to not talk about it, right?
Oh man, I didn't talk about it. It was pretty easy. but no, I'm being very facetious. I know exactly what you mean, though.
I mean, the only other way you could make it more obvious was if Sean Penn had a really bad tan. Like seriously, how much more obvious could you get? In all of this, really. Not to mention too that I will say this though, as much as Paul Thomas Anderson takes the piss out of the right, he also takes the piss out of the left, right? He's making them, as equally unredeemable and unlikable as the right. So I will give him props for that. So that kind of goes into the 0.9 score that I gave, because at least he's not entirely making the French 75 look entirely heroic. Like, he's making them look just as bad as everybody else. Because I mean, seriously, like, any organization that thinks it's okay to like walk into a bank and shoot up the place and kill somebody, yeah, these are people that you're not really gonna want to root for at all. Plus, I do have an issue with the whole time frame situation, because they said, they jumped 15 or 16 years after the first 30 minutes, and I'm like, well, is it set in 2006 or is it set in 2016? What exactly is going on
Oh,
here?
that's
Like,
a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that, because
it's gotta be. I mean, because think about it, like, if they were trying to make a statement about the current political situation, they would at least want to set it around 2014 to 2016, because that would give Willa enough time to grow up and be her current age, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's like, well, like, are you like you're talking about you're clearly addressing current events. Let's be honest here, because what happens in the first 10 minutes of the movie, that's clearly a dig at what's going on right now, right? But then you have this underground far left group that's using lingo from the 1960s. I mean, this is stuff that the Weathermen used when they were trying to take down, Nixon and his government for the Vietnam War. So it's like, well, is it really set in the present, or is it supposed to be set in the past, or is it one of those things where it's like a floating timeline where you're not really supposed to know when it's set, but you kind of know when it is? And it's like, well, no, I'd very much prefer you just tell us and kind of get that out of the way so we can, quote unquote, enjoy the movie. But they couldn't even give us that. It's like, it's like they want to be ambiguous, but they also want us to know what's going on. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree with you. And like I said, I really went into this because I remember seeing previews. And I'm like, it doesn't really exactly look like something I'd watch, but I'd be willing to try it out, right? I really like Leo. I like Benicio del Toro. Seeing Sean Penn and everything in it. It was like, oh, okay. Maybe I'll check it out. And then it kind of just totally flew under the radar, right? And then all of a sudden, like, all the buzz started to happen around it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, now I have to kind of pay attention to it, because now it's garnering all this attention to the point that, like, everywhere, everyone's like, yeah, this is the front runner for it. So I was like, okay, well, hey, I mean, I guess we got to watch it. And as I watched it, I was like, nope, did nothing for me. Absolutely did nothing for me. So
Lee, like last year when we talked about Emilia Perez, you kind of laid out what what the elements were in that movie that kind of made it Oscar bait. Are there any elements in this movie that you can sort of say, yeah, I can sort of see where they're following the same tactic here?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, it comes. I mean, the whole fact that they're like this revolutionary group, right, going into detention centers. I mean, that's like, the political climate 101 right now. So, hey, cool, that's going to be a part of it. And, I mean, that's really that's the problem with the two, right? That's the other thing. It's not even the main focal point of the movie, right? So you have this whole them, going after, going into this detention center to do stuff, right? And you kind of create this idea that, hey, we're going to be focusing on this group, right? The French 75, they're going to be doing stuff like this. And really, it's only for the first half an hour for the film, because the rest of it has absolutely nothing to do with it, right? However, they definitely do keep it up with, the Christmas Adventure Club. So you have to have some, sprinkling of very clear racial overtones. So you're going to have that throughout the film. So, like, the whole backdrop is nothing but, like, politics and everything like that. And it just, to me, it just doesn't pull it off at all, right? Because, I'm here to watch an engaging story, right? So if you want to have those elements, then hey, fine, right? Show us those elements, right? That doesn't bother me at all, right? You're gonna, you want to tell your story, then go ahead and tell it, but don't sit here and make me as the audience watch your film, but then everything else you focus so much on kind of creating all these elements that you make the main story totally hollow. And that to me is the big problem that I have with this, and why, it could sit there and it, has these elements of, kind of this Oscar bait idea, right? Of, we have to have, political stuff in there because that's going to be what everything's going to be about. But then that feels like the main part of what you want to talk about, and then the whole story played second fiddle, and then it just turns down into a whole bunch of nothing, and that's what we got.
So it was more focusing on virtue signaling than it was actually telling a story.
Oh, absolutely, right. And it tried to be very like tongue in cheek with it, right? Like it's trying to be like, oh, we're just gonna make it so over the top that it's gonna be kind of quirky like that. But I'm like, you know what? I just want to see how these two characters interact, because really it's just Bob and Willa getting back together is the main purpose of it. And I just don't feel like anything that the movie did really made me feel good at the end that they got back together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Lee, why don't you go ahead and take us out here, because I've got nothing else to add to this.
Yeah, I just, I can appreciate the fact that everyone's not going to always agree with what's a good film, right? And I think the fact that, comedy definitely plays an aspect of this, that, comedy is very subjective, right? And it's always hard to see what I find funny, what Luca finds funny, what you as an audience member find funny. It could all be very different, right? And I'm sure people watch this film, felt very strongly about it, and that's cool with me, right? Doesn't bother me at all, right? I appreciate the fact that, I could look at something, not enjoy it. Somebody else could look at something and think it's phenomenal, right? I can totally live with that, right? That's the reality of the world that we live in, right? Just because I find something good or something bad doesn't mean that my idea is the correct idea.
What? Wait, you're the movie part.
Shut up. My main thing is, though, right? When you're trying to create a movie, for the love of God, create a movie, right? Create something that's good, that if you take out all the other bullshit, you still have the heart of a story, right? That's all that I care about, as at least for me as an audience member, right? All I care about is just give me some type of story, right? Because all the other shit, it doesn't mean anything to me, right? Like I've said this time and time again, right? I am absolutely not political, nor do I care about politics and films, right? I do not care about that, right? I don't care if you're far left, far right, in the middle. I don't really care, right? All I care about is, hey, cool, I want to appreciate a good story and a good film, and that's all I care about, right? That's all I want to see. Just give me something that helps me enjoy the situation, right? However, I don't get that, right? Don't get that at all in this film. I felt like you put too much of your agenda in the front, and me as an audience member that just doesn't want anything to do with it, right, ends up not enjoying anything about it at the end. Now, you can make the argument, hey, you know what, Movie Pope? The film wasn't made for you, right? And that's fine, right? I would agree with that, right? However, if you're going to create something, right, I would hope that you want this message to be something that's shared with the masses. And for something like this, especially a lot of these films that feel very, kind of more on the political side of things, right, as time moves on, I don't know how impactful these or memorable these films are going to be. So it just, to me, was something I was frustrated to see. And, if you, felt strongly about something, hey, share it in the comments, right? Help me understand what about this you felt very positive about. And if you didn't like it, then hey, feel free to jump on the parade of things that we talked about, where there's just things that we didn't like. But I think it's cool that we could watch something where I think right now the audience kind of says that, hey, this is a good film, right? And me and you, Luca, we're saying we're not seeing it, right? And I think that's a very cool thing, because it's something where, we all are looking at something in very different light. We all watch the same thing, but it all had a different impact on us. So, hey, you know what? No matter what side they hang on, don't be a dick to each other. And just, if you like the film, you like the film. But, you don't got to sit there and give people a hard time. And if you didn't like it, you also don't got to give people a hard time that like it. So that's that for me. I don't know what I'm rambling about now. I hope everyone has a good one. And we'll see what other films are out there for Best Picture as we continue to watch a lot of these strong films that are up for the Best Picture award.